Hello, great ones. Welcome to the Live and Be Great podcast. I'm your host, Latanya Sampson McDonald. I am a life coach and a registered marriage and family therapist associate. And this podcast was created to motivate, educate, and inspire all to live and be great. On today's episode, I wanted to address the stigma around taking medication for your mental illness. So, our last episode, I did promise you guys to further dive in to this conversation. And what led me to do it is that I recently started taking medication for my anxiety, my ADHD, and my depression. Okay, so I too had some reservations. Let's not beat around the bush. Let's get straight to it. I did in the past, but when I became a therapist, I became more of an advocate, especially when it came to the overall stigma around mental health in the Black community. I wanted to make sure that I advocated for anything that could give us extra help, right? So one of the main, I believe, fears that people have is that they want to have control, right? Always be in control of their mind and their body. So they have a fear that if they get on the medication, they won't be able to control themselves, right? Which is a valid fear. If they have to get on medication, they may never be able to stop it, right? That's another fear. And I would say another one is kind of like a pride situation, right? It's all basically how you think when needing help, right, affects your views on mental health and medication. Because like for example, for couples therapy, a lot of times if your spouse or your partner says, we need to go to therapy, a lot of people, their instinct is, okay, I'm in trouble for something. And that is understandable because the association with needing help is you may have done something wrong or you can't do it on your own. Like when you go to the doctor and they tell you this is wrong, okay, you kind of associate that when it comes to needing help, right? That's even a fear that some people have. They don't want to hear that anything is wrong with them, so they don't go to the doctor, especially in the Black community, which there's other things as to how going to the doctor and needing help affects us psychologically. It is so deep, okay? Especially me as a Black woman, and in society and the culture is to basically adultify me and get me to multitask at a very young age. Like, as Black women, we don't really get to be children. Black men as well. Like, we don't really experience the majority of us don't really experience the freedom and the carelessness of childhood. We try to the best of our ability, but based off of that thing that we cannot change, our parents often have to make us aware about who we are and how we are going to be treated at a very early age. So that also, I would say, contributes to how we view needing help. Because, listen, I remember the fear of, hey, my mom telling me, you better find whatever it is. If I get up there and I find it, huh, well, y'all already know what's going to happen after that, right? Those of us who have experienced that type of childhood, that was passed down from generation to generation. Which leads me to, let me break down, right? Let's go back. Let me break down as to what made my decision easier for medication. Like I said in the beginning, I was an advocate. Once I became a therapist, advocate for all my clients, right? No matter what color they were. And yes, I did see the stigma, I did see the fear whenever it was suggested, or, someone may have been on medication in the past and then like how it made them feel, or somebody may come from a family of addiction, right? That's a big fear. Or, like I said, go back to the first three that I talked about, that wanting to be able to do things on our own, right? Especially as Black women, because you were trained to do stuff on your own, and if you couldn't, based off of the trauma that you experienced when it comes to child rearing and corporal punishment and all of that, you have this great big fear that if you can't figure it out yourself, you're stupid or you're slow or you're less than, right? And that is not the case. I often tell my clients, even when they do make the decision to come to therapy or come to life coaching, my clients, that it's a step, right? It's a step in the right direction to break generational curses. No matter what your ethnic or racial background is, it is a step in the right direction, right? But you don't have to stop there. Yes, I realized how much it took for you to trust me with your heart, with your healing, with your stories. I understand, right? But it's not about, let's go back to what I always preface when it comes to having healing or receiving support. It's not about needing support. It's about the support that you deserve to have, just based on being you and you deciding that you want different for your life and you want to get the best out of your life. Everybody deserves that support, okay? Every last human being deserves that extra support. And, my Black people, y'all definitely deserve that support, okay? So you're owed that. So when it comes to medication, if you guys don't know about by now, I'm about what I say I'm about, okay? So, this transition into being strictly an entrepreneur, because last season I was still working and then I was like, that's it, never again. Like, my mental health just cannot take it. I need a break, right? When it came to being an entrepreneur and wanting to do healing my way, okay, the overall effect of what I experienced and my healing journey to get to this point had some residuals, okay? And that part, I want to call it, I can't remember if I've mentioned this term before this season, but I want to call it trauma withdrawal. Okay, so trauma withdrawal is going through trauma during your life, right? When you get to a point in your healing journey where you finally cleared out the things that were keeping you broken, right? When you get the empowerment that you need to go ahead and set those boundaries, cut off those people, uh, raise your standards, whatever it is that you decide to do. You meet your healing goals. Not, that you're done healing, but you meet certain healing goals that empower you. Um, there's a residual effect, okay, when you finally do reach that freedom. Um, the things that you may have had dealt with before can also be more clear when you have the time to sit and think, okay? And if I'm confusing you, I'm going to go ahead and just lead with truth, right? So you can better understand where I'm coming from. So I made the decision to set boundaries with my family, right? Leave California, exit the rat race, and become a full-on entrepreneur, you know? And the move was stressful, as you guys know, with the first two episodes and the Patreon episode. It was very, very, very stressful. But when we finally got settled and we finally got our place, the residual effects of the trauma showed up, okay? Um, so with ADHD, right? When you are happy, okay? The things that make you happy, you can be fixated on that, right? Because the ADHD, the anxiety, the depression, they kind of bounce off of each other. And there's a high chance that if you have one, you may have the other. Um, there are, it's certain things that go unnoticed, and it's usually if somebody has one diagnosis, they have a couple other diagnoses, especially Black people. And definitely, yeah, especially Black people, people of color, that go undiagnosed, I should say. And, counterparts, Caucasian or more affluent people, it may present itself differently, right? But ours goes undiagnosed because they didn't really take into account our culture, right? So we kind of I as a therapist kind of had to figure that out for my clients and myself on my own. Okay, so back to the ADHD. When one of the signs is, of course, childhood, you could have been overly talkative in class or extremely quiet, right? But instead of raising your hand and asking for help, you would stay up all night trying to figure it out, right? And back then, we didn't have no Googles. Like, we had to go to the library. Until I was in high school, we had to go to the library or ask my parents for help or, go to after school programs or whatever the case may be. But the trauma of that, okay? Being hit as a child, and also being told that, hey, you got to work 10 times harder, that part, and not really being able to process it, you have a sense of fear, and that's where the anxiety comes from. Anxiety is like, okay, if I make a mistake, somebody somewhere gonna come with a shoe or whatever the case may be and knock me upside my head, right? Even though you may be in your adult life and there's nobody that's doing that to you, but psychologically it's still in your bones, as to why. And everybody has their different, I guess, psychological staple as to where that becomes a thing that's in your subconscious as to why you have anxiety about certain situations, and you may go into a full-on panic attack or whatever the case may be when it comes to having major anxiety, right? And then the ADHD, how that plays a part is being fixated on the happy. Like you can eat some cookies, right? Eat a cookie. And because of that feeling, it feels good. You cannot even be hungry, and the cookies are gone, right? Or you find a way to de-stress, okay, like playing video games or watching YouTube videos or whatever the case may be, and you become overly fixated on that because at the moment it's making you happy and you can sort of neglect other things, right? So there's a lot of famous people, a lot of multi-talented people. Usually people with ADHD have multiple talents because of that fixation on what was making them happy, right? Hence why I was able to become a therapist, because I could be a healer in my sleep. Like it brings me joy, it makes me happy. So it's easy to sit there and focus and be fixated on my clients when it came to that. But other things, like sometimes cleaning up and normal routines, right, can become overwhelming, right? And that's part of that residual effect that leads into the depression. And remember, I told you guys, when it comes to certain cultures, the depression don't always look like. It doesn't always look like I can't get out of bed, right? Sometimes it looks like I get up and I do everything I got to do, but when I come home, I'm drained and I don't want nobody to talk to me sideways, or you could get it. Like we gonna argue. But when it came to my experience, right, with the depression, if I wasn't doing what I loved to do, other tasks will become overwhelming, right? And the residual effect, like I was talking about, I started to notice all of the trauma I had experienced, and even more so, right? The stuff that I normalized, I actually was able to take a moment and face myself, and tell the truth. And it was like, Latanya, baby girl, you've been through a lot, and so many things you shouldn't have had to go through. Okay? And coming to that realization and actually facing it instead of the norm, right? Oh, I've been through a lot, but I'm here. I've been through a lot, and I'm here, right? If you just say that, and that is your mindset, you can kind of gloss over, right? If you don't truly have a concept of what you actually have been through. If you don't get a moment to yourself, which was to remove the distractions, right? I didn't have a set schedule every day because I'm like, this is my first time having freedom. And I've been on go for some years now without any breaks. I had time to like really reflect and think. Okay. And that's the part of the healing journey that I think people aren't quite aware of, so it scares them a little bit, you know. But it is indeed necessary, okay? But with the depression, it was the awareness of what I had been through and my body trying to look for places to rest, mentally, spiritually. Where can I rest? So it did look like, Mom, I can't talk to you today, or Dad, or family member, certain friends. Nope, I can't do this no more. I'm not doing this. But which is good to have those boundaries, but the other part is now you don't trust your judgment when it comes to a lot of things, right? It can get that deep. Some people it's not that deep, right? Some people they can get the freedom and be free and never really address certain things, right? Um, they could get to a point in therapy to where, okay, I joined because I wanted to, be able to stand up to my family and do whatever, right? Whatever the case, or have a better relationship with my husband or my child or whatever, right? But there's another part on the back end, which is called the work that you have to do outside of being held accountable in therapy. And this part is difficult. I'm going to be honest with you guys. So, having to face myself was, I would say, the idea of it, I may have thought it was going to be easy because I'm an open book and I don't mind facing things and addressing things. But the new awareness of what I actually had been going through this whole time, what I had been putting my body through, my mind, my spirit through, by just taking stuff and normalizing stuff that I hadn't realized I normalized, right? Even though I discovered a lot while I was in therapy, more came to the surface with this downtime. Okay. So I found myself, like I said, this part, go to dance class was easy. Uh, and going to, what is it called? What is it? Oh, working with my clients was easy, but the the other stuff, the other important things just became a tad bit difficult to find motivation for, right? Once I had that time with myself to really reflect and rest and come to the realization of what my true story, what my true journey is. Okay? So like I said, I noticed a change when things became a tad bit more difficult. Um, the ADHD and depression and anxiety, when it comes to me being a therapist and just being a healer and also being a sensitive Pisces that just wants to give love, spread love. It was, I would say, a lot of overwhelming thoughts when it came to, all right, I'm helping people heal. And the thoughts that came was, but I'm sending them out to a world that they got to deal with unhealed people. And I started to question, like, can I help enough people so they won't have to deal with that, right? And I'm like, well, how can I do that? Okay. So then brought it back to the business, and I was like, okay, I'm doing my podcast. That's going to reach people. I'm doing TikTok. That's going to reach people. And I'm going to try to post on Instagram once I get this TikTok situation down, right? Which is, by 33,000 followers. Thank you if you are following me on TikTok. So with that mindset of, okay, I want to help people and I want the people that I help to spread the word or not have to deal with so many unhealed people. So how can I reach more people? How can I heal the world, right? That was where my ADHD, my anxiety, and depression went. And yeah, you can't save everybody. But when you're in that state and you're so overly empathetic to people's overall experience and you're a deep thinker, right? Like I am. I was going a little too deep. And it was making me sad, right? Because then it came to the point where with my social media, if you look at it, that was one of the key signs of me having ADHD. And I don't know if somebody that's listening can relate to this, or you may know somebody that you've seen do this, right? I don't really post that much. And they'll get to a point where I'm posting amazing videos on YouTube, on everything, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, whole social media, amazing videos. But I'm putting a lot of thought and a lot of care into those videos. They're not just randoms. Like even when they have something called duetting, where you react to a video and the video you're reacting to is on your side. So it shows up like that when you post. So people can see your face reaction to the video and actually see the video that you're reacting to. And even those, I put incredible amount of thought into it, while other people that may not have such a big attachment to social media or the healing drive, like some people want to grow their business, some people do it to inspire people, some people do it as marketing purposes. Well, that's what business too. Some people do it just because they have fun doing it, right? And why celebrities do it, they have to do it to stay current. Like it's a requirement. They even ask people on auditions now for things like, what is your social media following? Even some people will ask for, depending on the type of job outside of entertainment, what's your social media following? So it's become a necessity, right? But how I think and where I was at, I wasn't to the point where I could just think of it as business. I was like, no, everything I say and do has to be meaningful, or what is the purpose? So that's me. That was me putting a lot of pressure on myself. And that's how the ADHD, the anxiety, and the depression built this darn, they were like Voltron. And it was a lot. It was a lot to deal with. So if you look at my social media, I'll be on this like reset, right? Because that's another thing with ADHD. You press reset, boom, and now it's a boost of energy and euphoria and happiness, and then something will happen, and then it's gone. Right? Or your mind is taking another place. So a lot of times I will start certain projects and I'll stop. Right? One of the key indicators, if y'all caught me, if y'all been following me since last season, was how long it took me to come back to the second season. Right? That was part of the trauma withdrawal and the effects of it. Now, ADHD, anxiety, depression, I've had these my whole entire life, right? Didn't realize it till I was in school for my master's. But I didn't really think about medication at the time, because I don't know, I just didn't think about it. Like I just didn't think about it for me at the time. I mean, I thought about it, but I didn't really preface it. Now, had my therapist told me I needed it, I would have listened. I would have definitely listened. I would have done it then. But at the time, there was so much going on. Like I was actually in trauma while trying to get my master's degree and, get my clinical hours and with being introduced to therapy and actually have to put boots on the ground. And have clients in order to graduate, because we had to have 250 hours of clinical experience to graduate and 3,000 to be able to sit for our license exam. But I was going through a lot during that time from left and right. And it was like I was at work 24/7 based off of what was going on in my life at the time. So I think medication would have helped, but and as far as my earlier years, I don't know. I really do not know, because your environment does play a big, big role in your healing and can sometimes make things worse, right? When you do decide to fight for yourself, because it is very difficult to heal where you were broken. Okay? Extremely difficult. And my family not having the education, me not having the education or the exposure to this type of healing, and the culture, right? Because let's be honest, little black girls, we're usually taught to just keep it together, right? No matter what. We sometimes get overlooked, and we train ourselves not to even cry or respond. You know, if it hurts too bad, yeah, we'll go ahead and cry. But let me give you something to cry about. Shut up. Huh. Silenced, right? So we carry that into adulthood. So we could be going through things and just brushing it under the rug and just present, not that we're dealing with it and we figured it out, but we figured out a way to perform well enough to where we can ignore it, right? And we put it in the back or bury it so that we can perform in a way that nobody sees it. Okay? So it doesn't mean we're not sad, we're not upset, and it didn't traumatize us. But based off of the lack of care in our experience, and that that leads to the ADHD and the depression and anxiety. And I do work with a lot of black women, and I can't really pinpoint any of them that don't have this combination of a diagnosis, with PTSD as well, based off of how you were raised. Yeah, and the culture and how you're treated in society played a huge role on why I'm like this and why a lot of us are. And we'll discover, hopefully, by doing research and listening to this podcast, that this is a part of it. Okay? So, fast forward to today. I'm sorry if I'm all over the place. That's how my mind works, because medication isn't a cure. It does help stabilize you so you can learn new skills to help you, right? But I would say, yeah, stabilize you so you can be more aware and start to retrain your brain. And you start to retrain your brain, it's difficult to do it by yourself. So it's important to still go to therapy, which they don't really tell. Pharmaceutical companies don't really tell you, want to advocate for that. They should make it mandatory, but they don't. They do not. They should, because that fear of having to be on it forever, right? If you go to therapy, there's a high chance that you won't have to be on it forever, because like I said, it's just supposed to stabilize you so you can receive the support and get some sort of balance in your life and start to retrain your brain, your spirit, your physical, your eating habits, sleeping habits, all of that, so that you can learn new ways to cope with your diagnosis so you can still live the life that you want to live. Like, you can make your diagnosis your superpower. Okay? But sorry, I keep sidetracking, but I just want to make sure I give as much details as I can and charge that to my heart, right? Because I want to make sure that you know everything. But yes, it is also another part of ADHD. The deep thinking and going on and grabbing certain things, because the ADHD also, a lot of thoughts come to your mind at once. And if that is coupled with compassion and empathy, you're going to make sure, even if the details may be unnecessary to certain people, your heart is saying, I want to tell them everything because I don't want to forget and I don't want to leave something out, right? A lot of our conversations are like that with ADHD. Even if you're naturally a quiet introvert ADHD person, right? Let somebody bring up a topic that you're well versed in. Okay, you could go and go and go, and it's vital information. Okay, um, but you don't know that you've already actually been using your diagnosis as a superpower. And I want to talk about that more um, on, I would say, part 2 of this conversation with the stigma around medication and my story, right? Because I don't want to make this episode too long. But I probably am going to touch on this again. And you guys get to see my journey like you do. You get to compare podcasts, like recent podcasts, to previous podcasts of last season when I wasn't on the medication. I was in therapy, but I wasn't on the medication. To when I came back and I started the medication the week of the 32nd episode. Okay? So I think I was like 2 weeks in, maybe. No, I was a weekend. Yeah, I was a weekend of being on the medication. So I wanna delve more into this conversation on the next in 2 weeks. Okay. But yeah, I'm doing well. I didn't have, some side effects. And when you have side effects, you do need to go and let your healthcare physician know. But I got to remind myself to touch on what that experience getting put on the medication was like. Because I woke up one day and I decided that I was going to give life my best shot, right? That was my reset. And that you often have that reset when you have these diagnoses, especially if you don't know that you have them. You have the reset time where you figure out some way to get your inspiration and your motivation to get through, right? Whether it's through therapy, whether it's through a friend, a spouse, whether it's through watching a movie, whatever, right? I decided to be truthful about it because I'm not understanding why I have all of this freedom now and I'm reliving my trauma that I thought I addressed, right? But other things came out that I hadn't noticed affected me as well, that I had buried deep. Like I said, when you get time to really think into yourself and you have more control over your life, for those of us who want to have freedom from the rat race and really do life on their own terms, this is a part of the process, okay? So, the next episode, I am going to talk about the experience. I'm writing it down right now so I can stay on task. Experience of getting on the medication, right? And I want to talk about people who already self-medicate, okay, in different ways. But yeah, you guys stay tuned for that because we don't want to make this podcast too long. It's already long already. But I know you're going to get some good stuff out of this, okay? You are, and please share it. Share it with anybody, especially anybody that you haven't talked to in a minute, because that's also part of the ADHD. It's not that we want to text you back, we want to call you back. We thinking that we need to do it, but something else done grabbed our attention. Because that's how our mind works, and there are coping skills that you can learn and that you can use to get you back on task when you have the help that you need, even if you're not taking medication. There are things, but we'll talk about that on the next episode. Okay. I'll see you guys then, and don't forget to live and be great. See you next time. The Live and Be Great podcast will be airing every other Friday. If you have truly enjoyed this podcast, thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for giving Live and Be Great a chance. Please feel free to share, like, give a review, subscribe on whichever platform that you're listening to right now, on iTunes or Apple Podcast, Spotify, Anchor, as well as Google Play. The Live and Be Great podcast is strictly crowdfunded, so if you are interested in becoming a supporter, you can click the link in the description, or you can go to liveandbegreat.com and scroll to the bottom and donate to the Live and Be Great podcast today, so I can continue to give you good and motivational content. Thank you all for listening, and don't forget to give yourself permission to live and be great.